Hello, Scoob believers, and welcome to the new and improved Undiscovered Entrepreneur. Get across the start line. And it's me, Scoob, coming at you, whatever device you happen to be listening on. All right, so obviously we've done a lot of changes. The intros and outros are a little bit different. The way I introduce the episodes are going to be a little bit different. And the way we're going to structure this is going to be, I just can't wait to have just show all this to you. So we are changing things up just a little bit when it comes to the people that we talk to and the subjects we talk about. So we're going to start kind of getting a better idea of what actually stops people from getting across the start line in their entrepreneur adventure. So we're breaking it down. This is going to be a solo episode, and I'm going to break down all this new stuff with you that I'm going to go over with all my interviewees and all that good stuff. So here's the deal. I have been interviewing people, new entrepreneurs, and a few experienced entrepreneurs too. And it seems like all these people that I talk to, getting across the start line has broken down into four major pillars. So I'm going to go over these four major pillars that I've discovered in my interviews. So pillar number one that stops you from getting across the start line, and that's perfectionism, or trying to be perfect, or not making any movements until whatever it is that you're putting together is 100% perfect. And I got to tell you, out of all the people that I've talked to, all the interviews that I've done, all the entrepreneurs that I do my interviews with, there's nothing perfect about what we do here as entrepreneurs. It's never going to be 100% perfect. We can't wait until that one perfect moment where all the planets align and everything is just going exactly the way it's supposed to be before we launch anything or get across that start line. It's not going to happen. In which you're going to be waiting longer and longer and making excuse after excuse after excuse about it not being perfect. So until we actually make a movement of some kind to get across the start line, it's not going to be perfect. Ultimately, it just breaks down to paralysis by analysis. You're always analyzing everything and waiting for that one perfect moment. From other people that I listen to, basically perfection is the thief of happiness. There's no way we're going to be perfect and happy. It's just not going to happen. We have to get across the start line now. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's nothing perfect about what we're doing here. So we need to keep that in mind when we're trying to get across the start line. And sometimes perfection is the one thing that actually keeps us from getting across the start line. So thing number two, imposter syndrome. Now this subject is very close and dear to my heart because I did suffer from the imposter syndrome. And especially when I was probably about a year or so into what I was doing and I was trying to expand more, but I always talk to myself, who am I to be doing this? And I don't have any degrees. There's people much further along than I do that other people are going to listen to. So why are people going to listen to me? And I realize more and more people are going to listen to me because I'm me. I'm my authentic self. And I love being who I am. And I love being the one that's going to be helping you. So that kind of helped me out a little bit. Also, not owning imposter syndrome. I don't like to say my imposter syndrome. I have imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome usually works a little bit better for me. Even though I still have imposter syndrome a little bit as I go along here, the more I do and the more I see and the more energies that I get from other people that are following me and encourage me to what I'm doing, the imposter syndrome isn't so bad for me anymore. But imposter syndrome is definitely something that stops us from getting across the start line. We start comparing ourselves to other people. They're doing better than me, so why would I bother doing this? Imposter syndrome. Imposters can be used as an excuse too. I don't want to do this because there's people that do it better than me. I don't think I have what it takes. All negative things that we tell ourselves on a day-to-day basis that doesn't let us go across that start line to start anything. So imposter syndrome was a lot of what I've heard from other entrepreneurs and what I experienced for myself too when it came to getting across the start line. So the other thing I talk about a lot is failure. There's all kinds of different types of failure. Failure is one of the pillars that I talk about in not being able to get across the start line. We all have failures. Failures is what we do. It's part of the process of how we get across the start line. When we have a failure, when we have something that doesn't go according to plan, when we get that no, or we get that you're not good enough, or we get that just that negative feedback from somebody else, how we actually take in that negative feedback, how we actually use that information is what makes us who we are. Whether we take it as a failure and I throw my hands up in the air and say, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm done. Or do we say, this failed, but why did it fail? And how can I use that information to my next entrepreneurial adventure? Use that failure as part of a stepping stone into your next thing. As long as you don't give up, that's the thing that really stops people from starting, is they're afraid they're going to fail and they're just going to give up anyway. We really can't think like that as entrepreneurs. Instead, let's use the information from that failure and use it to our advantage into the next thing that we're going to be doing. So when we come across that situation again, we know exactly how to handle that situation because we've dealt with it once or twice before. So is failure really a failure? I don't think so. I just think failure has been given a really bad rap as far as how we experience failure and what we do with the information from that failure. So it's really important to keep that in mind as we go along. And I always say when we talk about failure, we talk about the acronym for failure: first attempt in learning. If you haven't heard this yet, is this the first time you've heard that? Think about it for a second. This is the first attempt of doing something we've never really done before. So of course there's a chance for failure. You almost have to expect it, especially if it's your first time actually trying something you've never done before. Of course failure is going to be a part of it. You've never done it before. It's what we do after the failure. It's what we do after that thing either goes bad or whatever it is that happens when we try that thing. That's what we have to think about. It's what happens after the fact. The last pillar I'm going to talk about encompasses all three of these other pillars that we've talked about: perfection, imposter syndrome, and failure. And all of those things are fears. Honestly, that's what it all breaks down to. These are all different types of fears that we experience when we start our entrepreneurial venture, or anything else for that matter. We can't let fear stop us from getting across the start line. And like I like to say, fear, the acronym for fear, false evidence appearing real. None of these things are going to hurt us. None of these things are going to be saber-toothed tigers. They're going to bite us and kill us, or whatever it is that could be happening there. We have these fears: this fear of no, this fear of future, this fear of inspiration, fear of future. What's going to happen when I start doing this? What happens if we go along and we actually succeed? Some people fear success. What happens when we succeed? Where do we go from there? We all fear the unknown. And if we don't know what's going to be happening, it kind of gives us a little trepidation and makes us nervous if we don't know what our future holds for us. What we need to do is reframe that and be excited instead of fearful or stressed about what our future might hold for us when it comes to fear. It comes from the same part of our brain. Fear, stress, and anxiety and excitement and energy comes from the same part of our brain. So why can't we just interchange those things to anxiety to excitement? Think about those changes that we can make if we could interchange those two for something that's a lot more positive than anxiety. So in future podcasts, these are going to be the subjects we're going to be talking about. The different pillars of stop. What stops us from starting? The 4 pillars of stop: imposter syndrome, perfection, failure, fear. That's what we are going to be talking about in these next few podcasts. So I hope this kind of makes sense to you all. This has made sense to me after 3 years of solid research and interviewing other people. Now you know what to look forward to and how I can help guide you past these pillars of stop to get you across that start line. I know you will learn something from everything that we put out here on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur, getting across the start line. You will get that start that you're looking for. Somewhere along all these interviews, all the people that we talk to, all the tools that I'm going to be giving you in future episodes, you will be able to use to get across that start line. So let's do it now. Let's do it together. Let's get across that start line together. Your first step has already happened, and that's you listening to this podcast or watching this YouTube video. You have taken a step across the start line just now. Make it your best step. Don't stop. Don't stop. Now that you've taken the first step, take the second step, take the third step, get across that start line. I know you can do it. I have faith in you, and I'm sure there's other people in your life that have faith in you too that will encourage you, that will help you keep moving forward, help you get across that start line. Because if you don't get across that start line, there's no finish. There's no end. There's no goal at the end. There's not going to be any goals unless you get started. So get started right now. As soon as this episode is over, start doing things. Take the opportunity, take the 5 minutes after this episode is over and write down what you could do, what 1 or 2 things you could do to help you get across that start line. All right, Scoob Believers, thank you very much for a solo episode. I don't like doing these, to be honest with you, but this was very important to me to make sure that you take that first step across the start line. All right, everybody, thank you so much for another great episode. The next episode we'll have is a new entrepreneur that's just getting across the start line and helping you do the same. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.